What is going on, Colts Nation, and welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Your guys, Cody and Derek, back with another one, guys. Derek, we were talking off air, man. This is probably the longest we've gone for a while without some fresh Colts content. So wanted to get back in the saddle a little bit. I know for both of us, summer can get a little bit wild. So with that being said, guys, we wanted to jump right back onto it and talk a little bit more about the Indianapolis Colts. Obviously, the Colts now have some time off for a little over a month until training camp at the end of July, but there's still a ton to talk about when it comes to this team. So today we're going to look ahead to 2025, to the regular season, and talk about 5 players who we believe are primed for breakout seasons. But before we do that, just want to let you guys know that this episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Give online therapy a try at betterhelp.com/juice and get on your way to being your best self. All right, Derek, let's get right into this video because this is kind of interesting, right? Because we did one last year, and it was a lot of players that had been on the Colts for at least some amount of time, right? It had been some players that, either had gotten injured before or some players who hadn't quite, broken out yet that we thought were primed for breakout seasons. But this, I think, for the first time in the show for this episode, this type of episode, this is the first time we're going to include a rookie onto this list. And it doesn't happen a lot. But Tyler Warren's got to make this list, Derek. It's almost like was tempting to just put the tight end room in general because we know how historically bad it was a year ago. It was really bad. And obviously quarterback play didn't help into that. But you throw in Tyler Warren, who a lot of people would say there was some debate, but pretty much if you ask any expert, they had Tyler Warren as a consensus number 1 tight end in this class. He fell all the way to the Colts there in the draft in the first round. So you bring in Tyler Warren, you factor him into this offense. He was the offense for Penn State last year. I mean, this is the guy coming off a 100-catch season and just a guy that all around the offense ran through him. So you factor him into this Indianapolis offense, which, frankly, Derek, it hasn't had a reliable target at tight end since Jack Doyle hung it up back in, 2020? It's been that long. So you really, really needed that for Indianapolis. It was an absolute need for them. And now you bring in Tyler Warren, who is the do-it-all tight end. He obviously can catch, like I said, over 100 catches in 2024, but also he can block. He can do a little bit of everything. So talk to me, man, about why you believe that Tyler Warren deserves to be on this list as a prime breakout candidate.
Yeah, I mean, obviously for breakout candidate, typically that reserves for players that have been on the team for at least a year, primed to, do better than what it is that, they did in previous years, right? But for Tyler Warren, I feel like he's one of the only few rookies that you could put on a breakout list because overall, I think why you would put him in a breakout list for this is because of just how abysmal the tight end group has been for the Indianapolis Colts for the last, 6-7 years. It's been quite a while since we've had some elite tight end production come out of that room. Like you said, ever since the Jack Doyles or the Eric Ebrons, even with those, like Ebron had elite numbers.
It was all right.
Jack Doyle was all right.
Mm-hmm.
But, this just feels like the first time in forever that we have a guy that actually can do everything on the field and, will be utilized in a lot of ways, Cody, that his production, I think, is going to tenfold what you have seen from this tight end group in general. Not only what he can do in the middle of the field, but again, when you get into the red zone, the amount of touches that a guy like Tyler Warren will likely, gather, that definitely will increase those touchdown numbers. And I mean, it wouldn't shock me to think that, Tyler Warren could have a legitimate, almost, double-digit touchdown usage by the end of the year. I mean, it almost could be that because of just the amount of ways you can utilize him in this offense.
Right. You saw what Penn State did. Obviously, they lined him up at tight end. They lined him up, as a fullback. They lined him up everywhere, man. He did everything. In fact, he threw the ball a couple of times. And that's why, Shane Steichen joking after the draft, we might play him on defense because he's just that versatile, man. You can use him in so many different ways. And like you said, red zone opportunities, like those are going to be huge for Tyler Warren. I mean, when you can line him up anywhere, when you can line him up in the backfield, you can line him up on the line, you can line him up a bunch or whatever you want to do. You could just line him up in so many different mismatches. It's going to be awesome. And it may not be double-digit touchdowns in receiving. Now, it might be, but like you said, just overall, it might be a couple rushing. It might be a couple receiving. It might be a throw. I don't know. But all that to say, Tyler Warren's going to be an absolute weapon all over the field. And I think, honestly, like Jack Doyle could do it all. Like he could block and he could catch. But I think, honestly, Derek, when you look at Tyler Warren and just from a potential for what he can become, like I think Tyler Warren has the highest ceiling since Dallas Clark. I really do. From an all-around standpoint, from what he can do as a blocker and what he can do as a receiver, I think he is definitely the ability. It's probably the most the Colts have seen in well over a decade. So very impressive by Tyler Warren. And I'm excited to see him when the regular season does hit. Now, as we continue on the offense, this is another player that we figure is going to factor in. I don't know how much he's going to factor in, Derek, because there's going to be a lot of mouths to feed on this Colts offense. But certainly you need this guy, A.D. Mitchell, to break out. Because if you do, Derek, if A.D. Mitchell can become what you hope he can become and what his potential is, I mean, Derek, this might be a hyperbole. And if you think I'm crazy, call me on it. But I think if A.D. Mitchell reaches his potential, he can be wide receiver 1 on the outside. Like, I really think he has that ability to be that. Obviously, we saw what happened last year. It didn't go anywhere near that. So, again, potential is the word right now with A.D. Mitchell because we know he has the ability to get open. We know he has the ability, to separate all that. So we know he can do those things. He has the physical abilities. But last year, there was some mental stuff going on, right, with the catch a point and some of the, business decisions people would say with A.D. Mitchell and, similar to what we talked about with, some other guys, like the quarterback situation didn't do them any favors, right? But you definitely think A.D. Mitchell, if he can have a breakout season this year, Derek, I'm not saying he's going to be wide receiver 1 this year, but if he can have a breakout season this year, Derek, I think this easily catapults this wide receiver group to top 10, if not top 5 in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, if you could get very good production from A.D. Mitchell, then obviously this is going to catapult a already decent wide receiver room into a really good wide receiver room. As far as the, number 1 wide receiver on the outside remarks, not obviously, like you said, not right away. It could be in the future, maybe when Pittman is looking for that second contract, maybe then A.D. Mitchell, takes the reins. But as of right now, no, that's reserved for Pittman. Pittman is the workhorse guy, mainly because you can rely upon him. And, ultimately that's the big question with A.D. Mitchell is reliability, because the amount of drops that he had was astronomically bad. And, it was never an issue that he had in Texas. And so that is a big blunder as to why that is. I'm sure there's a bunch of reasons as to why, those drops started happening now. But whatever those reasons are, he's got to be better at that, because he has all the talent in the world and he's got every skill imaginable to be a good wide receiver in this league. But he's going to definitely have to, improve upon that catching ability. And if he does, then he will absolutely have a breakout year.
Absolutely. You need it, man. We absolutely need it. If this Colts offense wants to take it to another level, you need guys like A.D. Mitchell to break out and fulfill their potential. And if anybody can do it, I think Reggie Wayne can do it. So I'm hopeful in year 2, it's a lot better than year number 1 for A.D. Mitchell, but we'll have to see.
What's up, BTJ Nation? This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Guys, it's a struggle out here in today's world. Men face a lot of immense pressure. We have to perform, you have to provide, keep everything together. So it's no wonder that 6 million men in the US suffer from depression every single year. And a lot of times it's not even really diagnosed. A lot of times it just gets swept under the rug, or, we just don't talk about it. I've never had therapy personally, but, you being able to talk to someone is such a big deal. It's good to be able to have that coping ability and learn those skills and learn the boundaries so that you can understand what you're going through and how to deal with it more efficiently. It just empowers you to be the best version of yourself, because believe me, holding in all that stuff that you're going through, it really can eat up in you, and it really just is not a good thing to be able to handle by yourself. So join the over 35,000 therapists BetterHelp offers and provides, helping with the world's largest online therapy platform. And they've served over 5 million people globally, guys. So this is certainly not something that is just small. BetterHelp is a big deal. They have the largest online therapy provider in the world. As I said, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise, guys. You guys got to talk it out with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/juice. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/juice.
All right, so that does it here for the two skill positions. Now we have one more position on the offense we got to talk about, that being the center position. The Colts are going to have a new starter this year, and we're not 100% sure yet because there is going to be some sort of competition, but I think we're fairly certain that Tanner Bortolini is going to be the starting center for the Colts this year. He's going to have to compete with Danny Pinter for that spot, who played well as well last year, but it seems like, Derek, all signs are pointing to Tanner Bortolini being that guy for the immediate future for this team. I mean, you drafted him last year out of Wisconsin. He played some snaps for you. And, when Ryan Kelly was dealing with another injury, Derek, I mean, Tanner Bortolini played well. He played good football. I know there was a point in time where him and Ryan Kelly were like neck and neck in terms of what they were doing on the field. So now he gets more of an extended look here. He has an extended opportunity here to be the center of the future for this team. I mean, we saw Derek coming out of Wisconsin. He was one of the most, I think he was the most athletic center we've ever seen, right? So he's got the ability to be one of the best centers in the NFL. Like, ability-wise, it's absolutely there. So will Tanner Bortolini break out? We think he has an opportunity to do so. And if he can replicate and even take his play from a season ago when he was on the field and take it to another level, I think Tanner Bortolini has a chance here, Derek, to really ascend into a nice young player for you for a while. Regardless if it's Anthony Richardson, Daniel Jones, or another quarterback next year, you at least know center, which is very important. You know that you have your center of the future. What are your thoughts on Tanner Bortolini here?
Yeah, he definitely had to come in a lot last year, and, as a rookie, had to take snaps for an injured Ryan Kelly. And, you never really want to put, that kind of pressure on a rookie, especially a mid-rounds to late rounds rookie. You don't want to do that right away. But Tanner Bortolini came in and, he did very well. And, he was an average to occasionally above average center last year. And that's really good for a fourth round center. Again, we've always said Chris Ballard, there's two positions he can draft very well in late rounds. That's offensive line and linebacker. So, it works out very well. And Tanner Bortolini is just another example of that. And you got to imagine, this year he's going to have a full off season knowing it's his job to maintain, his job to get those skills refined, all of these different things. Now he doesn't have to think about, oh, am I going to play? Am I going to do this? Am I going to do that? He knows the position is his. He's going to go out there. He's going to do his best, and he's going to be able to focus solely on being the best center possible in that moment. And I definitely think that he can 100% break out, knowing that, he's going to have probably Matt Gonsalves to his right and then have Quentin Nelson to his left.
Absolutely. And, Bordolini was so athletic last year. And I feel like we even saw this in certain ways with Bernard Ryman, where the athleticism was never in question. It was just like, you got to get a little bit bigger and a little bit stronger, right? And we saw Bernard Ryman, he gained 10 to 15 pounds of muscle, and then he became one of the better left tackles in the NFL. So is that going to be the route for Tanner Bordolini as well, where he puts on 5, 10, 15 pounds of muscle? All of a sudden, he's got the athleticism still, but he's also got the strength to match it, right? And I think if he can do those things, he's going to be just fine. So really intrigued to see Tanner Bordolini here in year number 2, and can he take that position and continue to be, playing at a high level? So hopefully he can do that. But Tanner Bordolini is the second player here that he's the third player here that we're going to highlight on the offense. And we have 2 on the defense as well that we want to talk about. And ironically enough, Derek, more guys even that are, former 2024 picks here for the Indianapolis Colts, right? Got to talk about Laiatu Latu because, he's a guy that we really felt like when he had opportunities, he played pretty well. He had some key plays, but I think there was a lot of problems with that defense last year. It felt like he hit some sort of wall at some point during the season. So what can Laiatu Latu do here in year number 2 with, Lou Anarumo, new scheme, and just some new things they're doing defensively? How is that going to favor a player like Laiatu Latu and what he's able to do getting after the quarterback?
Well, there's really no other player on this list that you need to break out more than Laiatu Latu, to be honest with you, because it's such a pivotal position. And again, the Indianapolis Colts have been trying to find a answer for it ever since Robert Mathis retired. And we haven't been able to come very close. We've had some seasoned veterans that have come in here and have, gotten a few double-digit sack seasons, barely, but it really hasn't translated much to winning more football games. Ultimately, you want to see Laiatu Latu break out because, again, you need it at that spot. You did all this work on the defense, to get Lou Anarumo in there. You brought in all these secondary guys, and you even selected another defensive lineman in the second round to try to strengthen this rotation. Ultimately, we're trying to see what we got out of Laiatu Latu. And sure, it's only going to be his second year. But, again, he was one of the most polished guys coming out of college that we had seen in recent memory. And you're really hoping that this year he does break out and show that all that hard work is paying off.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. All right. So let's continue on, Derek. One last guy we got to highlight from the 2024 class, another defensive player and a player similar to Tanner Bordolini who kind of had a limited role. We saw a little bit of him in 2024, but now with, the player that was in his position last year, shipped off, gone, no longer on the team, this opens up the opportunity for a player like Jalen Carlies here to step into more of an extended role. And now with the Colts playing less linebackers on the field with Lou Anarumo's defense, it does give him more of an opportunity here to do some things as that number 2 linebacker. What are your thoughts on Carlies, who, another guy that very athletic and is going to have an opportunity here in year 2?
Yeah, Carlies, a player that I have very high hopes for. Really hope that he'll continue to build into that type of linebacker that's really needed. We've been saying it over the last several years that, the linebackers that we currently have don't really, I don't know, they're not as much pass-oriented linebackers at this point. And, that's very important to have, linebackers that can read coverages really well. Because if you don't, then you're going to end up really leaving the middle of the field very exposed. And, Carlies, who was a former safety moving down to linebacker, is a guy that definitely is a very understanding of how to be in a zone and where to go and things like that. So you're really hoping that Carlies can break out and have that big year, because now, I mean, we talked about it all off season, Cody, that, linebacker was very much a need. And the Colts very much didn't really address it that much. They're going into this with full confidence that, knowing they lost EJ Speed, that they were going to have Carlisle, they were going to have Zaire Franklin, and, whoever else was behind them. Obviously, Hunter Wooler is, going to be in that mix as well. So, it's time to step up and, show what you got. Because if you don't, then, there's going to be a lot of issues in that linebacker core.
Yeah, we'll have to see, man. A lot of guys injured right now, so hopefully they can get back here by the time training camp comes around in the end of July, but we'll have to see. All right, well, guys, that will do it here for our 5 breakout players here for the Indianapolis Colts in 2025. Again, you'll notice a lot of young guys here that we're hoping will break out, and I think, Derek, if these players break out, Colts are going to be doing some pretty good things here in 2025, but we'll have to see. But, guys, let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. But, guys, that'll do it for this one. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that like button, hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell, all that good stuff as we continue to drop fresh content for you guys. But that'll do it again for this one, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. We greatly appreciate it. And as always, guys, go Colts.